First, an update on the Secret Service story. A short time ago, the agency announced 3 more employees have resigned and 1 additional has been implicated. Another was cleared of serious misconduct but will face administrative action. And now to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That is syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Judy.
Different subject. David, flurry of new polls this week in the presidential election. What did you take away from what you saw? It showed all of them virtually show the race is tightening.
Yeah, a little Obama edge. But, well, why don't I give you my meta theory of where we're going to go in this election. Usually there's like a dominant party, a majority, or what they call a sun party, the Democrats in the 30s, the Republicans in the 80s. In my view right now, we have 2 minority parties. We have 2 parties that have a minority of voters in what they call a moon party, sort of 2 moon parties. And then the electorate swings reasonably volatilely between whichever party they hate least at that moment. And so I think we're at a moment of pretty strong volatility in the electorate. And so we enter the race with both parties with a reasonably fervent 43%, and then a lot of people who are disgusted with both. So when you enter the race, when you look at the polls, Obama may be ahead, he may be slightly behind, they may be tied, but I think it's going to be more volatile than the last couple presidential elections because of the extreme alienation in the electorate.
You see that kind of volatility?
The moon-sun galaxy?
Sure.
I see a star here, Judy. No, I think it's a lot more like 2000 and 2004 elections, which were both close, both fiercely fought, right now, than it was like 2008, where there was a breakout winner in President Obama. I think right now we've got no clear favorite. The president is better off than he was 6 months ago, sense of the improvement in the economy, and he's far better on all the personal qualities of cares about people like me, more likable, more approachable than is Governor Romney. But it's an election about the economy, and when the economy is bad, the economy is the only issue, and that's the one place where Mitt Romney has an edge. In the Wall Street Journal NBC poll that came out today, and the other surveys as well.
Well, a few weeks ago, the polls were showing the president had a little bit more of a lead than he has now. So is that the economy? Does that explain?
Well, I think what you've got, Republicans have consolidated. I mean, after a rather bitter primary in many respects, they've all come home to Mitt Romney right now. So I think that ups his numbers. His own numbers have improved. My theory is a little bit different about the 2 parties. I think that the Democrats, when they pick a presidential nominee, they basically have to fall in love. They like somebody who's an underdog, unknown, and running for the first time. Witness Jimmy Carter. Witness George McGovern. Barack Obama. Bill Clinton. Yeah. Republicans, by contrast, fall in line. And you can see that they like somebody who has the endorsement of party leaders, who leads in the polls, and basically has run before. Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, Bob Dole, and Mitt Romney and John McCain. So Republicans, I think, have come together more quickly. The one thing Republicans have going for them that the Democrats had going for them in 2008, there's more enthusiasm among Republicans by about a 10-point margin over Democrats right now. That's the reverse, almost the reverse of where it was 4 years ago when President Obama won.
So, David, what do you look for in the months to come? We've talked about the economy. We talked about the level of enthusiasm. What do you? I mean, you look at everything.
Yeah, a couple things have to be decided by the candidates. As Mark mentioned in the polls, and especially in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, Romney has a slight edge on who can handle the economy, but huge deficits on can he relate to people like you on the personal stuff. And so does Romney try to build that up? And I guess he does, but I think he's probably not going to win a popularity contest, an elegance contest with Barack Obama. So I think what he has to do is say, it's not about me. First of all, it's about Obama, but mostly it's about, I'm going to offer you these 4 things I'm going to deliver if president. And he really hasn't told the story of what the next 4 years will look like. And so he can't just say, I'm a businessman, trust me, I know how to run a business. I think he says, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. And you may not like me, but hire me to do these things, and I'll do them for you. And I think that's really the gap he has to fill. And the Obama people have to decide if they're going to attack Romney as an extremist or a flip-flopper. You can't do both. And so they have to make that decision. These days, they seem to be heading in the extremist direction, which I think is the wrong direction.
Is that right? Because the reporting you're seeing now, or the analysis, is that they were focusing on Mitt Romney, the flip-flopper. Now it's Mitt Romney, extreme conservative.
Yeah, and I think that's, A, less true, and just not going to sell with people once they see Romney in a general election campaign.
What do you think about
Well, I don't know which tactic the Obama campaign will eventually move to. I think by calling him extremist, I mean, which you can certainly do from several of the positions he's taken. I mean, he's a man who calls for a 20% tax cut for everybody right now. I mean, as he's talking about fiscal responsibility, which would lower the top rate to considerably where it was below when Ronald Reagan was president in the really festival days of the Republican resurgence. But where he is on immigration, where he moved on immigration, praising Arizona and all the rest, I think he's vulnerable because he can't change. He's in it very difficult. He can't flip. He can't flop. I mean, because that's the rubric of Republicans right now, and it's a great misgiving about Republicans that they have for him. I mean, is whether in fact what does he believe? Who is Mitt Romney?
So, are you saying maybe the extreme conservative line may be effective for the Democrats?
I think that if you tie him, Judy, I mean, by his positions to values. In other words, he doesn't care about the middle class because he's endorsed the Ryan budget plan. I mean, I think I'm not endorsing it, but I think it's a logical campaign approach. I think what we have, you asked what the campaign's about. Right now, I am pessimistic about this campaign. I mean, I don't see us coming out of this campaign, given the current status of both candidates and their positions, with any kind of a improved feeling about the country where we're going.
Pessimistic as a citizen.
Pessimistic as a citizen, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a sense that there's going to be an endorsement for Obama's position, or whatever his second term is going to be like, or for Romney's.
I've got a little more optimistic about it. Not that you see it yet, but it's in embryo form, that they're heading toward a big debate. They really do have different views of what's brought us here. The Obama says we've had business resurgence, deregulation. It led to a crack up, and now I'm trying to put the pieces together in a balanced way. Romney says we've had decades of really growing federal leviathan, stagnated the economy. That's two different visions. They haven't yet told the story of where those visions go, but that's a pretty fundamental debate, and we could, in theory, if we drag them that way, could have a debate where they confront what those two big visions means. It's equally likely, of course, that the super PACs and trivialities will distract them away from those big visions. And the reason the candidates want to get away is because when you talk about what's going to happen the next 4 years, it's probably pretty nasty choices that have to get made: healthcare spending, budgets, taxes, and they'd rather not talk about that.
Mark, you sat in on and watched the Democratic pollster Peter Hart put together a group of, I guess, 12 voters,
right.
Republican voters down in North Carolina this week.
Florida.
Oh, was it Florida?
Tampa.
I'm sorry,
That's
Florida.
Yep.
Looking at, I guess the goal was to look at what does Mitt Romney need to do. Tell us what you.
These were Republican voters. I mean, they voted for John McCain, Marco Rubio, or Rick Scott, the governor of Florida. So, and they were basically Romney, although they hadn't all been for Romney in the primary. But what was amazing, Judy, is they have no idea who Mitt Romney is. And part of it is, you could see it, Romney's strategy in the primaries was to disqualify Rick Perry, to disqualify Newt Gingrich, to disqualify Rick Santorum. He made the case on why they should not be president. He's never made the case on why he should be president. And that comes through. I mean, people say, look, he's not a regular guy. I don't feel he fails the would you like to have a beer test completely. Barack Obama is seen as far more approachable and regular and natural than even in these Republican voters. But as I said, they don't know where he stands, what he really believes. They admire the fact that he's a good husband, good father, good values, and has been a success in business. But there isn't any personal or philosophical connection with him.
What do we take away from an assessment like that, David, at this stage in the campaign when you still got 7 months to go? He's got time to answer
on the other hand, he's been
these
running for president
questions.
for 5 years.
Yes.
So, to me, the difficulty he faces, and I think he's just going to have to overleap this hurdle, he doesn't want to talk about Mormonism. And therefore, he doesn't want to talk about the two things that I think are core to his life, his faith and his family. And I think you just got to leap that over and say, I'm going to talk about my family. I'm going to talk about where we've been from, what we've been through over the generations, being beaten back to poverty and building it up. I think that's who he is.
His ancestors.
His ancestors, but including his dad's family and then his own family. It's a pattern.
It's an interesting thing, Judy. Two or three of the voters mentioned their concerns and doubts about his Mormonism and what influence it would have upon him. And these were people who are supporting Romney. So I think it's imperative that he have a Houston minister's speech moment where he does address it, how the values that have animated him or have defined him, and to make Mormonism more American mainstream. I mean, in its values that are comparable with American values.
And again, these are Republican voters.
These are Republican voters, yes. Yep.
Now, both campaigns finally rolled out a big initiative effort this week, David, to appeal to Latino voters. Where does that stand? What are the candidates?
I actually think the Obama administration did a reasonably good job of this. The tendency is to go speak Spanish and then do a bunch of ethnic cliches, which you've piled up. But one of the things they did intelligently was just do it straight policy. And they emphasized Pell Grants and other college scholarships. And they said, here's the policies that some of you are middle class, lower middle class, whatever. Here are policies that have helped you. And that's probably the right way to do it. I'm not a huge fan of breaking the electorate up into teeny tiny niches, or even in the case of Latino voters, a pretty big niche, because Latino voters themselves are an incredibly diverse population. Just tell your story. Tell your story, and if it works, it'll work with Latino voters, white voters, black voters. And so they told just a version of their story, but in Spanish.
It's a good point. I'd add this. Judy, half the growth in the country between 2000 and 2010 were Latinos. If voters had voted the same proportion demographically in 2008 they did in 1984, John McCain would have beaten Barack Obama. The country has changed that much to the point where we're looking at an election where maybe 71, 72% of the electorate is white, which is a drop of better than 15% over a generation. So Republicans don't have, you can't get enough white votes to win by themselves, and Republicans have to come up. And this is where Romney is in a terrible dilemma, because he moved so hard on immigration and what was seen as anti-Latino in the primaries. I think he's trailing by 69 to 29 in the Wall Street Journal, NBC poll among Latinos. So it's a real problem.
Well, it's not a problem having the two of you. Mark Shields, David Brooks, thank you both.